Good morning, everybody. We've got Chris Berlet joining us today from Stakeholder Gold. Chris is president, CEO, and director, and we welcome him to Investor News this morning and Investor Talk. Chris, before we get into the stock and projects, I always like to sort of go behind the story and get to know the jockey a little bit as much as the horse. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this business? And one doesn't go to Queen's and London School of Economics for the good of their health. Tell us how you got into the mining world and geology world and stakeholder world and a bit about your background first, if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you, Darren. My father was a diplomat, Canadian diplomat. So, I was, my brother and sister were born in Vienna, and I lived the first 2 years in Prague in late 1960s, and it just turned communist anyway. So we lived in Germany in the 80s. We lived in London. I lived in London on and off for 12 years, really, at different times. But anyways, we were living in Germany in the 1980s in Hamburg. And my dad had a friend. So I was just a young teenager. And this friend was from Vancouver, and he had been a financier for the Hemlo discovery. And he had 3 sailboats, big ones, a 57-footer out of called Kelpie that was built in 1903, beautiful gaff rig sailboat, antique almost, a Nicholson 38 that him and my dad ultimately sailed across the Atlantic, and another one so like he had this lifestyle, and he said, yeah, it's a great business, and so I thought, wow, that looks pretty exciting. And also Germans in general seem to have the impression Canada was a great place for resources and resource investment. So my conclusion was it was going to be, smart pace for me to spend my time. That's how yeah.
That's really neat. And so now we fast forward to Stakeholder Gold, which is what we're dealing with today. The symbol is SRC on the venture, newly listed on the QB. We'll get to that shortly. Tell us about the history of Stakeholder Gold now. You've been around about 15 years or so, start to finish, and we'll get into what we're doing now, but a little bit of past history, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I shouldn't take credit, and I won't. In terms of, I think we're on the cusp of major discovery in the center of the White Gold District. But the White Gold District was staked by Sean Ryan and by his only competitor, effective competitor, Mark Fekete. And Mark Fekete, in particular, went to the Ballarat Creek area because Ballarat Creek was a very prolific placer gold producer. So he staked the drainage into Ballarat Creek. And so that's how that was the genesis of Stakeholder. That was 2006. Ultimately the ground around the coffee project, subsequently discovered and moved into as a 5 million ounce resource, and ultimately bought by Gold Corp, etc. All that stuff transpired since that staking rush in 2006. I acquired, I started to come in as manager of Stakeholder in 2013. Pursuant to Mark Fekete's exit with, at that time.
So we'll start with the Yukon. There's a couple of projects there. The main one, I guess, is the Ballarat project. Can you tell us what's going on, what's going to happen, especially this year? I know there's lots on the go, but tell us a little bit about each project in the Yukon, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we look at 3 companies around us in the Yukon, all of which are very exciting and, tremendous market dynamic. Fuerte Metals, $1 billion market cap. Pierre Lassonde, core investor. Western Copper and Gold, also $1 billion market cap through the Casino deposit. Fuerte's got the coffee deposit, and then White Gold with the Golden Saddle and several others now spinning out copper assets from the gold. So the White Gold District has major economic gold and copper deposits discovered, now being advanced along towards production. So we're in a very good neighborhood. We're in the center of it. Again, because the history of the company goes back to 2006 when the staking started in that area. And now they're going to be developing the coffee mine and building a road through our ground. And a lot of work has happened over the years on the geology of our claims, which is called the Ballarat project. And we're drilling 2 separate, almost maybe even connected gold deposits that are orthogneissic rock type, gold, molybdenum, tellurium, indicator minerals, very large structures, very similar to the Golden Saddle deposit, large structures. And we're drilling a copper target that's called the Loki, similar to the Minto suite of rocks. That was the Minto mine, high grade, 2% copper, portions of it, due north of Casino. So these areas are separated by about 8 kilometers. So we have a maiden drill program, diamond drill program, even though we've done north of 5,000 samples, rock samples, RAB drilling, and VLF surveys, and a lot of data on these targets. Get ready for where we're at today.
And the Resource Gateway Road, that I know is an important element. Is it coming? Is it on its way? And where are we with that? And how will that affect you and help you guys?
Yes, it's coming. It's going 20 kilometers through our ground, and I will take a little bit of credit for that. We did add claims down. We had two objectives as we added to claims around Ballarat Creek. One was we wanted to get all of the drainage into Ballarat Creek because uh, uh, if we had all the drainage into Ballarat Creek, sooner or later we were going to find the source of the gold in Ballarat Creek. I mean, it's a very prolific placer gold producer, so there's a gold deposit there somewhere, which we've now found in the Sky Zone and the East Zone. We found, and we're about to drill it, but a very prolific placer gold producer is Ballarat Creek, and we wanted all the drainage into Ballarat Creek to find the source deposit. The second thing was once the road route became clear from 2016. We wanted to straddle that road route to the extent that we could. So we staked south, and it turns out that that's where we had a copper discovery anomaly that's now working. It's on a Pluton intrusive. Like I said, it's a Minto suite of rocks, and more than 2,500 samples that we're putting maiden drill holes into. This is about a kilometer east of that road route. So that road route now, from the south to the north, from the south where it hits the northern border of the Yukon River to the north part of our property boundary, is 20 kilometers.
And the Yukon area in general, I'm sure the answer is yes to this, but local jurisdictions, governments, local labor, not an issue. Indigenous, any hurdles or roadblocks with that? How's that going, if there is any? And give us a little bit of snapshot into those areas.
Trenda First Nations, Selkirk First Nations, relevant for this project, both of whom have been consulted with comprehensively by Fuerte, and now in the and Newmont prior to this, for development of the road, to development of the coffee mine, and also for the development, the progress and development of the Casino deposit. So there are bigger companies than us with much bigger balance sheets than ours, having those discussions, advancing, developing projects, and we are responsibly carrying out our exploration business under the auspices of their approvals, and anxious to do everything we can to remain compliant with all of their requirements for conducting exploration in the way that we operate our business, in order that we can satisfy all those requirements. So.
I always like to see her sort of in the mink mile of the Yukon, but tell us a little bit about the weather and seasonality. What kind of factor does that play in? What's your start finish of a drill season? I know you're looking to drill in the spring, but how is that for you guys?
The weather, this year I had a complaint when I was speaking to them in Whitehorse. I think it got to -50, the coldest on record since the 1970s. So I was going to say, hot and balmy like Florida, but it's not accurate to say that. So, anyways, they were whining because I mean, I got to hand it to them. They didn't want to leave their house. It was -50, and nor would I. And but it was a record cold. Obviously, you can't drill because you need running water and in the winter. So that's the main limitation. As they develop mines, they'll have some method of coping with -40-degree temperatures, which are not unheard of there for periods of time. But for diamond drilling, obviously you need running water. So there's about 8 months of the year when you're able to do that kind of work there. Yeah.
That's good. And I'm actually glad we brought up the subject of weather, because we're going on to our next topic. As Canadians, we all love to go to warmer climates and sunny climates this time of year. Stakeholder has done that in Brazil. Tell us a little bit about the quartz and the mining down there. How did that start? What brought you to Brazil? and we'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, we have a good business there, quartzite business, stone business, very high margin, and it's a cash business. So, very profitable. We're running 4 quarries now, going to be a fifth quarry this year, and we think we can get to 10 quarries, making about $1 million profit per year per quarry. So, it's been so far we've been reinvesting in the new quarries, but they're generating there, and we expect by June of this year really to be experiencing the benefits of 4 highly profitable operating quarries. So we kind of got into the stone business by I had a colleague that I've known for a long time. He's an engineer, Canadian, who was living in Brazil, and the Brazil has this stone business that's a good. There's lots of private Brazilian companies exporting stones profitably around the world. They're just not public companies for the most part, and they're not, they're not in the capital markets in Canada or anything like that. But they're running good businesses. So, anyways, we looked at this project, and we definitely, could see the merits of it and determined we wanted to be involved, and concluded that we had to marry that with our gold exploration business because gold exploration needs money all the time. And you can't do it half of the year, as I just said in the Yukon. So a cash flow business, a business that can produce cash and has a robust cash flow profile, made sense for us in terms of marrying that with our exploration business, and it's worked out well. It's expanding well. Like I said, I think we can our objective is to get to 10 quarries, making $1 million profit per year per quarry, but that's not probably the most powerful dynamic in our stock, but it sure gives us a lot of leverage in terms of defending our core value and our restricting share issuance and things of that nature. Yeah,
It certainly does. I like the model of your stock. I like the setup of your stock. I like what you're doing with your company, and I like the word of value you just said. One of the things that, and you and I have talked about this before, your carbon footprint and your carbon. We know there's got to be some sort of carbon GHG emissions coming out of Brazil, but you've offset that elsewhere around the world. Can you tell everyone a little bit about Stakeholder's carbon footprint and the terrific job you guys have done in that field?
Yeah. Thank you, Darren. You're kind of like one of a very small subset. We haven't done any news on that for a while, but basically, we looked at the carbon, and it can be done even more so in Brazil. But we're stewards of environmental best practice and compliant resource exploration, and we looked at an opportunity that was presented to us. It was 32 acres, just over 32 acres of abandoned land in New Brunswick. And it was presented to us by somebody that we've been talking to for some time, that was involved in tree planting business in Canada, in both out east and out west in BC, had a business on it, and said, look, this land that had been clear cut is available for sale at a very nominal price. So we thought, okay, we can afford that. We were generating real profits from our quarry, so we thought we can afford that. And then we asked him to quote on taking a crew. He took a crew of 4 people, and they planted 32,111 trees in 32 acres of indigenous species of trees, 4 different types of species of tree indigenous to that part of New Brunswick. Anyway, so then we pulled out and did our calculations, obviously, as this was going, what would be the carbon consumed on an annual basis and in total for those trees when they grew to maturity over 30 years. And that calculation came to 10 times the amount of carbon that we were emitting from all of our quarry operations, flying back and forth, and everything else that we could put in there. So, and the acreage cost us about $32,000, and the planting of the trees about another $25,000. So for $50,000, and we were making almost $1 million profit that year. For $50,000, we had a 10x negative carbon footprint. And we thought, somebody is going to ascribe value to that as we do that business. So we looked at that very carefully. We are considering expanding that, but that certainly sufficed for at least the first 10 years of our operation to make us carbon neutral. But when we do those calculations on what we can achieve in Brazil, there's significantly more advanced. So we're considering in Amazonas and other places buying land which is available for sale that's been clear cut, deforested, and the carbon sequestration budget that we could get from that is significantly larger than it is in New Brunswick. So, anyways, that's that business, Darren, and we think that there are investors that will value that, and that will. So we report our carbon balance in our financial statements, and I think there's going to come a point when we're going to be reporting very significantly negative carbon balances for the company, that we're sequestering more carbon from the atmosphere than we emit in all of our activities every year. Yeah.
A couple other things. I'm a stock trader as well as a investor host. You just got listed on the QB down on the NASDAQ only about a month or so ago. To me, that seems like it took a long time. Was that done sort of by choice or design, or how did all that work? And what was the reason for getting on there? And have you seen benefits yet, or you're certainly hoping to see them going forward, I imagine, south of the border, eyes and ears?
So two things. One is I think we're going to have the potential for a really powerful dynamic in our shares this year with gold and copper discovery in the Yukon. So we want to have a platform to advocate for people can buy, so that's was our motivation there. But I would say that the DTC eligibility part of it took more time than the listing itself. So that's our experience. And it costs a little bit of money, not onerous amounts. We think we've already seen benefits that exceed the investment required for it. So we're OTCQB listed, SKHRF, and then it's DTC eligible. Okay, and that has significant advantages also. They're not necessarily both hand in hand. You can have a QB listing and not be DTC eligible,
Right.
and then they have to take it in certificate form shares, and it's very cumbersome. So, you have to do both. And from our experience, maybe we had the wrong people, I don't know, but from our experience, the DTC eligibility took longer, much longer than we had anticipated, and a little bit more money, and was the most frustrating part of the process.
Last thing or two, financing these projects in Brazil and the Yukon don't get, I always like to say, get financed with just a smile. Last 2 years, you've raised a decent amount of money. How about going forward in 2026? What needs to be done, and what would you like to do?
I think our stone business can really start generating significant cash flow from June of this year. 4 quarries, including our latest, generating real profits for us. And then the Yukon, is going to be either financed from our work in Brazil, our operating quarries. That's the way we set up the company, to be able to constrain share issuance by having that cash flow business. Or, with the potential that we have geologically, there could be a very powerful dynamic and interest in the company for doing further work once we confirm that these structures of size are gold bearing and copper bearing respectively. So we might, but our objective, raise money if required at the best share price possible, and control issuance by having this cash flow business.
Awesome. Well, listen, it's going to be a wonderful year ahead for you and Stakeholder. We're happy to have you today. Anybody needs any information or further information on Stakeholder, we covered a lot of ground, but there's always more to be learned. Go to the following website. And Chris, thanks again for your time, and absolute pleasure. Hope to see you again soon. Talk.
Thank you, Darren. Appreciate it.
Right on.